Yes, it looks like I need a shave. But I just had to share this short go-show and some additional thoughts on a recent video I put out on the nature of attachment. And as I read this go-show that Nichiren wrote this letter to another samurai warrior, at this point, Nichiren has been sent a pardon from Kamakura, and he's leaving Sado Island. And as he's leaving Sado, this samurai sends him a couple of swords, which, of course, are prized items of the samurai. And Nichiren praises the samurai for these gifts as dedications, offerings, if you will, to the Lotus Sutra. And there's a lot of meaning behind this, and once again brought these thoughts of attachment to mind, which if you consider the nature of attachment in Buddhism throughout the sutra and the writings of Nichiren and Shakyamuni and Nagarjuna and so on and so forth, it's a very consistent theme. And so I wanted to talk about it a little bit before I talk about this go show, simply because there are aspects of every letter, every teaching that you read or listen to of Nichiren's invariably follows this format. He'll talk about specifics, about you directly, what you've done, what he's done, his life directly, and immediately shift to the expedient means, the skillful devices, the stories of the sutras. Always reference to the Lotus Sutra, but his scholarship goes so deeply within the entire canon of Buddhism that he will quote from many different not doctrines, but writings of Buddhism, as well as outside of Buddhism, because he addresses the cultures that he's talking to, and cultures have their own inculcated skillful means, if you will, fables, whatever, of like China's emperors and Japan's emperors and so on and so forth. So he uses stories from the culture he's talking to, as well as the extant dialogues of Buddhism, so on and so forth. My point is, it can seem like a jarring jump from thank you for the sword. In the Lotus Sutra it says seems to be this big gap. And I believe if you keep in mind the idea of attachment, because this is absolutely central to understanding the teachings of Buddhism, then you understand that this leap is designed around insight, your profound insight of the nature of life itself. This is what's in the middle. You are in the middle. More accurately, your experience of life itself is in the middle. And that experience is what marshals your attitude, your intent in life, but more broadly, your attitude, because your intent is a function of your attitude, is it not? And so if your attitude is not very life-affirming, then your thoughts, which are actions, will enact based on that foundation of attitude. So if you keep this in mind, this idea of attachment and attitude, where does our attitude come from? Our attitude comes from the myriad decisions that we're conscious and unconscious of in our own minds. Decisions that we've made about our experience and our experiences in the past hang out like little voices, and they affect our attitude. And as our attitude is affected, so too are our actions, our intent behind those actions. The way Shakyamuni talked about that storage of interpretations of experience that form our attitude is the monkey mind. So these are our monkeys, not actual physical monkeys, of course, but those little chirping voices that influence our attitude. And understanding that those voices are just that. They're just voices. They're not actual things. There are influences that we can, with our conscious mind, either discount or quiet or cease them altogether. But we can't do that forcefully. As humans, we think everything requires an opposite act of a physical nature, even if it's mental. Mind, body are one, right? So even if we think something's mental, our body enacts it, right? So that's why when we feel emotions, we feel throughout our whole body, right? Because body, mind are connected. So this is the roots of where in Buddhism we start to be able to identify and track our attachments. Some of those attachments, because Buddhism never denies our humanity, our nature, our samsaric nature. It just identifies it, because by identifying it, which is what our human nature does, right? We've talked about this many times. We are identifiers, categorizers, bin makers, right? So if we can identify what's actually happening that's influencing us, we can start to distance our conscious mind, our mind. We train it to have a new habit of not succumbing constantly to those monkeys, eventually to be able to just silence them altogether, because they're not real in the sense that they can cause us any direct harm. The harm that those monkeys cause us is to influence our attitude in a non-affirming way, or negative, all kinds of adjectives and verbiage we can use here. But I'm trying to identify the process for us, okay? So by understanding attachment, we begin to understand more deeply not only our personal attachment, but the nature of attachment in general. So I have a little analogy about a babbling brook, for instance. And I don't know if you guys are tree huggers or not. My name's Sylvain. It means of the woods. There's in me a strong current of identification and attachment to earth and earthy things, like the woods and nature and so forth. All of us have a different grounding mechanism. Some of us I've met who feel that kind of warmth when they're in a very busy city, which to me is a cacophony and somewhat scary and dislodging. So if this brook analogy doesn't work for you, perhaps maybe a subway route will do it for you. But here's my point. It has to do with this Gosho, as well as all of communications from Buddhism. This idea that you find yourself walking through a forest, and you're not hunting an animal, you're just walking through the forest and appreciating the smells of the flora, the fallen leaves and pine needles and so forth, and the crunching under your feet as you're walking through the forest, and the air is different, and you smell different plants and trees and so forth, and maybe you see a deer in the distance ruffling through the trees, and you come upon to this babbling brook. Now, all of these different moments may be for you recalled an experience that you may have felt of this frisson, this little chill that goes through you of amazement and wonder and appreciation. And it can be very emotional to suddenly realize with such deep appreciation how amazing something is just for being there, right? So in this example, it's a babbling brook, and it just makes these interesting noises, and you sit there and you look at it, and the water's so clear, and it's going over, maybe there's a little moss, maybe it's totally clean, whatever, but it just forces you to kind of squat and sit next to it and just contemplate the beauty of this little brook. And you look upstream and you see that it kind of disappears in the distance, but that's where it's coming from, and there's quite a current, and it's going away, and it's a tiny little thing, but it's so meaningful, right? This is the nature of attachment. You see these things, and as a human being in samsara, we immediately, not only are we attached to the babbling brook, but we devise meaning after cause, after constantly building our experience of this little babbling brook with all of these different constructs and meanings, and how important it now is. And we do that. This is the nature of attachment. Not just that something, oh, I like that. That's just the iceberg tip, if you will, of what our mind does as humans. It's just this onslaught from our own lives that we wrap around this experience. So in this case, a babbling brook. And we start to think things like, my life itself would be meaningless without this brook. This brook is life itself for me. I couldn't live without it. Right? And yeah, I'm going to the nth degree, but substitute the babbling brook for this girl I know, or this man I know, or this dog that I have. We invest so much of our experience into this other thing that we give it, give it so much weight in our lives that it totally influences. Well, what are we doing? We're growing monkeys. We're growing experiential attachments to something that is ephemeral. Because when the season changes and there ceases to be enough rainfall or enough snow melt or whatever that creates and causes this brook to occur, when it dries up, this brook will no longer be there. Will we cease to live? Will we be greatly saddened? Yeah, but to what degree? To the degree we invest our happiness in it. Do you see how we do that? Now, what Buddhism says is, okay, that's samsara. That's all well and good. And that's what we substitute for our experience of happiness and sadness, is this kind of attachment that we invest so much in, something that's ephemeral and is bound to go through changes, as you and I are, right? But Buddhism goes steps deeper. And it says, now that you see this, understand that the process at work, both in the babbling brook and your experience of it, are that another brook will return where this one once was. And where will that come from? Well, this is just a part of a larger process, isn't it? It comes from rainfall or snow melt. It comes from higher mountains, whatever your situation may be. But babbling brooks come from sources, and those sources, whether they're in mountains, on mountains, in the sky, are much, much larger processes than this babbling brook. Now, maybe your awe and your reverence for this brook now grows and becomes bigger than you can embrace. And maybe you shift your attachment to that. But the idea in Buddhism is that once you expand your understanding of this process far enough, for instance, it's the atmosphere, actually, that's providing processes for this rain, for this snow, even for the mountains themselves to exist, and the flora and the fauna that place this babbling brook as just a tiny little fraction of this much larger process. Oh yeah, and this atmosphere, it occurs around this planet, this Earth. And how many Earths have we found in this solar system, let alone the universe? Oh yeah, this had to happen from the precipitation of coalescing matter from stardust, before stars, before, wow, this process is just, to say the word immense is so ridiculously small compared to the immensity, the grandeur, the existence itself. Wow. Well, that's okay to be attached to that, because eventually what you get to being attached to is Buddha-ness, the instigating process of everything. We eventually get to the no thing, nomina, not nothing, no thing. If we can do that with our brains, with our human mind, we can begin to release our attachments to the babbling brook. Not that we don't appreciate it and love it and feel that little sizzle of emotion when we see it, but our understanding changes, our perception changes, and we start to see that our perception of that babbling brook, when we come across it in the woods, is a reminder, not a separate thing of itself, but a reminder of this process within our own life, because we are the generators of that emotion, that beautiful instantiation of something which is going on in our bloodstream right now. We are the same process as that which we are in awe of. A critical reminder that it is the process of all life, of which we are an intimate part, that we get to experience it. That's what should be our point of reference for this sensation of reverence and awe. See, it's never outside of ourselves. The environment, the perception of other, is simply a device to help us realize our own enlightenment, our own preciousness. This is the Buddha wisdom. This is what we seek when we chant to Gohonzon. The term mirror comes up a lot, especially in Nichiren, right? Because as humans, we need this device to see ourselves, what we truly are. And this is when you start hearing from Buddhism that enlightenment is extant already, all around you, in you. You are within it. You are it. But how to realize that it is something we have to train our minds to do, because our minds are constantly looking outside, right? Look at our eyes. Our eyes are made to see outside our bodies. You can't turn your eyeballs in and see what's going on inside your magnificent, amazing chemical, biological structure and mind. But this is in fact what we try to do through devices like this mandala of our Gohonzon. Because our Gohonzon is not merely our perception, our mind, this body's perception. It is perception in its entirety. And in this perception, the idea of attachment just kind of falls apart, doesn't it? Because it's so all-inclusive, it's so immense, that you're simply immersed. So there's no, when you're immersed in something, there's no reason to glue it onto you, right? There's no reason to attach yourself in something that's you're immersed in, that you are. So if there's any sort of a vague attachment notion there, it's in allowing yourself to experience it fully. This is why it's called awakening. Does that make sense? So with all of that, as I'm fond of saying, with all of that blah, 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 let's get to this Go Show. I've already introduced this as a letter to a samurai, a letter of appreciation, but Nichiren is going to touch on this subject of attachment and meaning, the meanings that we surround the things around us with, and trying to understand the deeper, the more profound implications of those earthly devices, perceptions, tricks of mind, if you will. So this is called the Swords of Good and Evil. Nichiren is the most perverse person in Japan, he starts. The reason is this. Nichiren proclaims that because the people revere the Buddha Amida, that thus come one Mahavarachana, medicine master, and other Buddhas, even more than their own parents and lords, the 3 calamities and 7 disasters are occurring in greater magnitude than in any previous age, and the usual disturbances in the heavens and strange occurrences on earth are now more terrible than ever. So, he's really assaulting the culture of his day, isn't he? He's saying, you people believe in all these false premises and these erroneous teachings, and you're bringing about all this misery in your life. So that makes him appear quite perverse to everyone. I am forever reminded, he says, that I am forever reminding them that they are not only ruining themselves and destroy the country in this lifetime, but fall into the Avicii hell in the next. So you're only creating your own misery, as I was just saying. He continues, hence I have suffered these severe persecutions. He knows he's leaving Sado, so that's what he's referencing. I might be compared to a summer insect that flies into a flame, or a mouse that dashes out in front of a cat. I am like an animal that knows it is in danger and yet pays no heed. But I risk my life as a matter of conscious choice. Therefore, I am a perverse person. So there's a lot in what he just said. He's saying, I may appear to be reckless, but I do so knowing that my recklessness only appears reckless to those who are watching me, that I'm in fact following a much greater, more profound path that they simply don't understand. This is what he's saying. So to them, I'm a perverse person. Now he continues. Stones are split open for their hidden gems. Deer are slain for their hides and meat. Fish are caught for their flavor, and the kingfisher is killed for its gorgeous feathers. And the beautiful woman is envied for her beauty. This is the case with me. Not that he's a beautiful woman, but you get the analogy. Because I am the votary of the Lotus Sutra, I have suffered all manner of persecution at the hands... Sorry. Say it with me. Page-turning karma. Okay. All manner of persecution at the hands of the three powerful enemies. How wondrous that you have, nonetheless, become a disciple and supporter of such a person. So, it may seem like a backhanded way of doing it, but he's really congratulating this samurai for having seen the greater mission of Nichiren's doctrine and chosen to follow him and learn from him when the rest of the country sees him as perverse, right? There must be some profound reason for our relationship, he says. Make every possible effort to deepen your resolute mind and conviction and reach the pure land of Eagle Peak. So Eagle Peak, as you know, is a reference to the teaching of the Lotus Sutra. The whole sutra is basically, especially the first 14 chapters, is a story of a ceremony that happens in the air. And as I've said before, this is a mental exercise of clarity and learning and teaching, right? So he's saying keep your resolute mind on the goal, on your Buddhahood, on your relationship, your one-to-one relationship with Buddha. Eagle Peak is this land, this place in the mind where you experience Buddha, right? He goes on. I've received the two swords, a long one and a short one, that you sent as an offering for dedication. The long sword must have been made by a renowned swordsmith. It is fully equal to the celebrated swords Amakuni, Onikiri, and Yatsurugi. You can look those up. They're famous swords of both historically through certain clans, certain samurai groups underneath a certain lord. All of these things, these swords are imbued with tremendous charisma, not only by their makers, but because they are symbols of power, and power through, unfortunately, killing and taking life, right? So this point isn't escaping Nichiren. Or to those famous Chinese swords, Kanchang or Mo Ye. You have offered this sword to the Lotus Sutra. By offering it to me, Nichiren, you are offering it to the Lotus Sutra, right? While you wore it at your side, it was an evil sword. But now that it has been offered to the Buddha, it has become a sword for good, just like a demon who conceives a desire to attain the Buddha way. How wondrous! How wondrous! So you see the point here. While you, a samurai, are carrying this sword at your side, its only intent and purpose is to slaughter. No matter how beautiful it is, the power that the influence, the attachment that it has is the purpose of murder and slaughter. Do you see why I spoke about attachment earlier? So now that he's offering these swords, these great symbols of power and slaughter to the Lotus Sutra, to, in essence, his enlightenment, Buddha, he has expelled their influence. He has not only thwarted their influence at his side for murder and power, but he's converted their influence to homage of the Buddha, because in other words, where they will never do harm, they will do the opposite of harm, in that they will stand as protection and evidence of life. Not power in a samsaric sense, but power in an enlightenment sense. He's converted, flipped the very power that this sword represents, has now become inert, and beyond inert, validation for life itself. How wondrous, right? This is what Nichiren is saying. Now he continues, in the next life you should use this sword as your staff, a walking stick, to support your life, not enable slaughter. The Lotus Sutra is the staff that helps all the Buddhas of the three existences as they set their minds on enlightenment. Set your mind on enlightenment. However, you should rely on Nichiren as your staff and pillar, because we all need supporters, teachers. We are samsaric. We are social creatures. To do this on our own can be done, but it is enormously difficult. So with others constantly reminding us and helping us, and also putting upon us the responsibility to remind them, because this is how social creatures work and evolve, right? This is the benefit of the Sangha. This is converting, if you will, attachment to reverence. Taking attachment, which itself is a negative process, and turning it to reverence, which is an opening, receiving, beneficent process, right? We go on. When one uses a staff, one will not fall on treacherous mountain paths or rough roads, and when led by the hand, one will never stumble. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo will be your staff to take you safely over the mountains of death. The Buddha, Shakyamuni, and money treasures, as well as the four bodhisattvas headed by superior practices, will lead you by the hand on your journey. If I, Nichiren, precede you in death, I will come to meet you at your last moment. If you should precede me, I will be sure to tell King Yama all about you. Everything that I tell you is true. And if you need to know more about King Yama, I'll let you make that a point of homework. He goes on, according to the Lotus Sutra, Nichiren is the guide who knows the passes and gorges along the way. Devote yourself single-mindedly to resolute mind and conviction with the aim of reaching Eagle Peak, experiencing, becoming one with your Buddha, the Buddha. Money, he continues, serves various purposes according to our needs. The same is true of the Lotus Sutra. It is a lantern in the dark or a boat at a crossing. At times it is the water, at times fire. This being so, the Lotus Sutra assures us of peace and security in our present existence and good circumstances in future existences. So there we are again. He's saying what I was saying before I started reading this letter, that if your mind is based on awakening, Buddha nature, on the greater process that everything is precipitated from, then those minor obstacles that we encounter in this samsaric life are so greatly minimized, because they're turned from obstacles to observations of the process which we revere, which we are in awe of. So they become lovable experiences. They make us giggle. They're no longer weighty obstacles that stop us in our path, that prevent us from experiencing happiness, that prevent us from moving on. Right? So no matter how sad one might feel of the loss of a friend or a lover or a car, or, I mean, even as I say these things, they should be sounding kind of ridiculous, right? But when we're in it, boy, we're just avalanched by emotions and feelings. But we're the ones who created those emotions and feelings. They're inappropriate because they're built on fallacies. They're built on the idea of this temporal thing that we want to make permanent, which is ridiculous. It's delusion. And this is why you see the word delusion always cropping up in Buddhism. Don't take it as an affront. It's not a judgment that, hey, you're crazy. That's not what delusion means. It means the inability to see the true nature of something. When we see the true nature of that which we're attached to in the grander scheme, it becomes a human entertainment, if you will. It becomes devoid of its power to negate the wonder of our lives and the wonder of its life. Wow, look at it moving forward. Look at him moving forward. Look at her going on. Oh, I hope they take care to embrace the amazing life that they have. What was that? I just took an attachment, embraced the process of it, and immediately Buddhist compassion came into play. And I suddenly wondered, as this attachment leaves me, will it be okay? Will it know the nature of its own grand process? Isn't that, as Nichiren would say, wondrous, magnificent, awe-inspiring? Right? Think about attachment in this way. We tend to think always of attachment as a negative, that's bad, stop doing that. Well, yeah, it has a lot of, as Nichiren would say, puts us in the three lower paths, right? It has a lot of fallacies attached to it. So let's reinterpret that attachment into something that indicates the frailty and the delusion of our human minds. Let's admire it for its power and let's send it on its way with a caution. Please awaken. Here, you no longer have negative influence. You go on your way, you exalt my existence, and you must find your own exaltation, your own method of realizing your awakening. This is radical thinking, always has been. But the only reason it's radical is because it's so hard for us in our human samsaric mind to just hang on to that. We get moments of it. You may be getting a moment of it right now, but hang on to it for the rest of the day. I guarantee you at some point you will need support, and that's what the Daimoku and this mandala is for you to remind every cell in your body of this truth, this reality, the amazement of this. So let's see, I don't think there's much more to this go, so let's see if we can finish it. Where are we at? Yeah, we've got time. Okay, great. He continues, of all the many places in Japan, Nichiren was born in the province of Awa. It is said that the sun goddess first dwelt in this province, where she began exploring the land of Japan. An estate exists there dedicated to the goddess, who is the compassionate father and mother to all living beings in this country. Therefore, this province must be of great significance. So he's talking about origins here, right? He's using the local geography and his own life as an example. But don't get hung up again on the words in the actual story. Look at the significance of what he's saying. He continues, what karma from the past caused Nichiren to be born in this same province? No reward could be greater. That is not the main point of this letter, so I will not go into further detail, but you should think about what I mean. Again, this is a realization we must have that our lives aren't based on this moment's perceptions of the things we're attached to and the meaning we build on those attachments. But in fact, the opportunity that we have in this moment to understand that everything from the universe, the Big Bang and prior, has led to this moment. Oh, that's bigger than I can embrace in my mind. That is the path to our Buddha nature. That is the understanding that our lives are far more precious than the petty little momentary attachments we have built so much meaning around. Even if we use the meanings themselves, the goddess being the instigator of the mother and father of all human beings in Japan. Come on, this is just an origin. This is pointing you at the origin of your now, of what and who you are now. What you're experiencing now is a result of immense energy. He continues, you must meditate and think on this as the heavenly gods, the heavenly processes, the forces with all your heart. Understand this great, massive process. Be ever diligent in your resolute mind and conviction so that your desire will be fulfilled. And what should your desire be when all desires are boiled into a funnel and the ultimate desire is? Please tell your wife all that I've said. With deep respect, Nichiren. So, there you have this letter written to Hojo Yagenta, a lay believer in Kamakura, about, sure, it's about the appreciation Nichiren gives him for the gift that this samurai sent him, but the significance of the gift. The significance of the gift, not for Nichiren, not even for the Lotus Sutra, but the significance to the samurai, having given this tremendous symbol of power and death to the Buddha, to have released his attachment to Buddha. Do you see? So this is the nature of all Nichiren's writings, right? To demonstrate to his followers that their simple acts of living as human beings can have profound impact on their experience, their life experience. And that this is the teaching of the Dharma. Wondrous. That's the key word for today. Wondrous. Okay, with that, we'll move on to another Go Show. But in the meantime, I wish you good health and success in everything you do. And profound understanding of the silly little attachments that we all experience every day. Let's turn everything to our Buddha mind and just be amazed and awed. Take care of yourselves. I will let you go. See you next time. Bye.